Hey, welcome to Therapy by Gabby. I'm Gabby. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I practice in the state of Wisconsin, and here I talk about things for therapists, therapy goers, and the mental health experience in general. Today's a little bit of a story time. I'm going to talk about how I became a therapist, and we're going to go all the way back to like right before I graduated high school. Basically, what I want to share about this part of the story is I had no fucking idea what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I knew that I loved reading and I knew that I loved animals, but thinking about the idea of being a vet and having to navigate like sick animals and sick pets, putting animals down, that's just not something I could handle. And I'm also not very good with blood and like needles and stuff like that, except for tattoos. I can do those needles. So I threw out the idea of becoming a vet, and instead I focused on my passion for reading. And I'd never really considered myself to be a creative person until I started doing like TikTok and YouTube. And I was thinking about how much I loved reading. I thought about the idea of writing books, but then I was like, I don't think I could actually write a book. I don't think I'm creative enough. And so instead, I was like, I really like the idea of people sending in, I don't know if that would be called like a manuscript, or basically their book ideas, things that they have written and are hoping to publish, and being the person to read that. I chose the major of professional writing and publishing. I completed about a year and a half of this major, and then I took an editing class, and I was like, fuck no. I don't want to do that. I don't like editing. It's not something I enjoy. So I need to really quickly figure out what else I want to do. And while I was thinking about that, I was still thinking about how much I loved words and putting words together in a way that was like witnessing life experiences and really hitting the core of the experience. And so that was still in the back of my mind. So backing up a little bit, before I even graduated high school and went into college, I had struggled with mental health experiences like anxiety and depression probably since middle school. And I started going to therapy around 14 years old, and it was a fine experience. I didn't like love my therapist, but at that time, I didn't know that I had a choice and that therapy could look much different than it was currently looking. Fast forward to college, to this point in time where I'm thinking, like, what the hell do I want to do with my life? I was seeing that therapist at the time because I think I had recently gone through a breakup or something, so I went back to her, and she was a licensed clinical social worker. And so I was asking her about the experience of becoming a therapist and thinking like, okay, like maybe this is something I could do. I really like this idea of supporting people with language. So I talked to her about it, and I decided I was going to switch my major to social work with a minor in psych. And that's what I ended up graduating my undergrad with. Now, fast forward to about my last semester of my social work major, I was planning just to go for a master's of social work. If you don't know anything about the social work programs, and I'm not sure if this is true for like all schools, but at least in my school and the schools that I was looking, if you had received like certain letter grades or a certain GPA in your social work major, then instead of having to do a social work master's for like 2 years, you could knock it down to one. So that was kind of my plan. I was gonna graduate my undergrad in 3 years, and then I was going to do my master's in one and then go off and be a therapist. Then I was talking to a friend about it, and she had mentioned that there was a clinical mental health counseling program at UW Whitewater. And I was like, oh, I had never heard of that, didn't even know it was an option. Because at this point in time, I'm like, I don't even know what LCSW versus LPC versus psychologist really means. I thought they were all the same thing. I was young, whatever. So I go ahead and go online and take a look at the clinical mental health program, and I compare it to these social work programs. And I'm not going to get into politics here because for whatever reason, therapists in the field will constantly fight with each other about LPC versus LCSW. I'm not doing that. All I'm saying is when I was looking at the LCSW programs versus the clinical mental health, I found myself really drawn to the clinical mental health program. That being said, my master's program, which the formal title was like Masters of Science in Counselor Education with an emphasis in clinical mental health. Please ignore my dog just like licking the shit out of himself. 1 second. Okay, back to the program. Anyways, so since I decided to do that master's in clinical mental health, that was actually 3 years. So I ended up graduating my undergrad in 3 years, and then I did my master's in 3 years. I did a total of 6 years of schooling. And throughout my master's program, I really struggled with mental health, anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, and what I would later, years removed from that experience, identify as, complex trauma experiences. I didn't know how to be a functioning adult while also struggling with my mental health. And it was confusing to me because I was in a master's program, had just graduated from my social work program, and I didn't know how to take care of myself. And so there was this one day where I needed an emergency session, and my therapist that I had had since I was 14 years old was not available. And so I got in with a new therapist. It ended up being the best thing that had ever happened to me because this new therapist, incredible. I credit so much of my growth and honestly just like being alive to working with her. I love her very much. I don't work with her anymore, but we worked together for about 6 years. So at this point in time, I'm struggling. I'm in my master's program. I'm struggling with mental health experiences. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I'm like, how can I help people when I can't even fucking take care of myself? And she looked at me and she said, the best therapists are the ones who get it. And you get it. And after that moment, of course, with a lot of like challenging therapy sessions and just like doing my work on my own time outside of therapy sessions, there were times I was seeing her twice a week. Through all of that hard work, so much changed. So much growth happened. And it didn't happen all at once. Like it took time, obviously. Like I said, I saw her for like 6 years. But I was stable. I was living. I was coping. I was able to finish my master's and successfully, and I had a job before I graduated. I successfully navigated my first job as a therapist. I joined a group practice. I left that group practice. I started my own private practice. I have a successful private practice that I run all by myself, and I truly credit that to the hard therapeutic work that I did years ago, because I don't think I would be where I was if I didn't deal with my own shit. Of course, I still struggle with like anxiety and bouts of depression, but it is far less intense. I continue to go to therapy and take care of myself, and it is the best thing that I do for myself. Thanks for being here. If you want to see more, it would mean a lot if you liked and subscribed.